Welcome to the Suitcase and the Scribe with award-winning journalist Scott Burnside and former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna, a member of the Nation Network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
Hey everybody, Scott Burnside back for another edition of the Suitcase and the Scribe. Mike McKenna in his closet in St. Louis. And
this is a studio. It's a studio. I'm going to cut you off. It's his home studio. It may be a closet, but it's a studio.
Listen, for a long time with our guest, Pierre LeBrun, I taped the podcast in my closet, but we didn't use a video. We weren't as high tech or sophisticated. And I'm so pleased that Pierre is joining us. And a number of things. Got the Dallas Cowboys hat on in anticipation of big Thanksgiving Day clash with the Raiders in Vegas or against Vegas. I don't even know where the game is, but
the game's in Dallas, as it has been forever. I mean, how much football have you watched in your life?
Do you know?
The Cowboys play at home on U.S. Thanksgiving, buddy.
I didn't even. Well, I know Detroit always plays at home, right? And in fact, not to go too quickly down the rabbit hole, but you and I have actually spent some Thanksgivings together in Toronto watching football at our favorite place, Upfront Bar and Grill, which no
longer exists. Yeah,
no longer exists.
That's how this. So I am hosting some pals tomorrow at my house, and over the years, it's either been at a bar or at my place. But outside of last year, where we didn't get together, this has been going on for 20 plus years, where I've gotten together with buddies. For U.S. Thanksgiving football. So I really take the holiday, even though it's not a holiday in Canada.
I'm curious about that for you guys. I mean, how much does it bleed over now? I mean, you're both Canadian, but you spent so much time working in and around the States. Is there any factor of thinking, hey, okay, this is a big deal to us now, the American style Thanksgiving, or is it just another day that you can celebrate and turn the Cowboys on?
Yeah, no, most people have to work. I mean, it's just another business day for a lot of Canadians, but
if you're in the US when it's happening, do you take advantage of it?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
I've just made it a personal holiday over the years. I've manufactured it for myself. Such a massive Cowboys fan, but most years when the CFL season is on its right schedule, everything is off right now in sports, as we know, but most years U.S. Thanksgiving also coincides with Grey Cup weekend, which is a fun time in Canada. A lot of partying around Grey Cup. And so we've had a lot of years, especially when the Grey Cup's been in Toronto, where there's all kinds of people in town from out of town. You know, obviously U.S. Thanksgiving's on a Thursday, but a lot of people are arriving that day for Grey Cup. And so those things have overlapped over the years as well, which is kind of neat, but not this year.
Yeah. Mike, so I just now we're down the rabbit hole a bit, but did you grow up? I mean, a St. Louis guy. I mean, the whole, the emotion of the Cards and then the Rams leaving. Like, what's your? And of course, you played most of your career in the U.S. I know a couple of Canadian stops, but do you have an affection? The whole football, the Thanksgiving thing? I mean, it's got to be. Your family must be pumped for this.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I always wanted to host Thanksgiving, and I never really had that chance with my family. I always hosted when I played. I was, the ringleader because I like to cook, and and we'd always get everybody together to have the meal from the team, and you'd get some unwitting rookie to try to make a turkey, and it would come out like shoe leather, but you'd appreciate the effort because they would inevitably buy like the biggest turkey they could find at the grocery store and cook it for like 10 hours. And so you make a ton of gravy and cranberries and try to save it with it. But yeah, it's exciting to do it at home. And I don't have any affinity to football at all. Okay. I explain this to people being a St. Louis, then that I have become an agnostic football fan. I have no allegiance to anyone because I've had two teams leave me in my lifetime. The St. Louis Cardinals football team when I was very young in the 80s, and then the Rams came and left.
Yeah.
And the Rams
tough.
And the Rams came to town really when I was leaving for junior, just before that. So I never really felt connected to him. So I'm a racing
greatest
and hockey
show
guy.
on turf. Greatest show on turf. St. Louis Rams.
Yeah, I mean,
one of the great Super Bowls, by the way. One of the great Super Bowls with Tennessee almost tying it in the last moments there, right?
Yeah.
I covered that one.
I remember I won a $1 bet with a player named Russ Bartlett. Or I lost it. I lost the bet at school at St. Lawrence because the Patriots beat the Rams in the Super Bowl, and I lost a $1 bet that I paid in pennies to a guy named Russ Bartlett. But so yeah, but football's huge in the Midwest, man. Baseball, football. I gravitated hockey, racing, so I just celebrate the food. Oh, I love the food. I'm not eating today.
This will probably surprise Mike, but the NFL is huge here in Toronto. I mean, the NFL TV ratings in the Greater Toronto area are through the roof, and right up there with all the major American markets. TSN has all the NFL games, and it's gigantic.
Yeah, not too.
I always wonder if we'll get a team one day. I don't know. I don't know if I want that, because, of course, will that influence my Cowboys fandom? Is my issue there, right?
Yeah. All right, so let's more some hockey talk, and Thanksgiving's. Thanksgiving's interesting for the NHL, because I think the NHL's done a nice job, and can't remember, introducing a whole slate of games on Black Friday, and sort of some national games, and really trying to take advantage of that huge viewing weekend in the US on the tails of Thanksgiving football. And I think for a long time, we've looked at Thanksgiving, and I know a lot of GMs and coaches do. They look at Thanksgiving, they draw the line in the sand and say, okay, well, where are we? Do we really suck? Are we okay? Can we, is this a mirage? All those kinds of things. And Pierre, let me start with you. But when you look at, especially, given the tumult of the last couple of seasons, and teams are still dealing with COVID, all those kinds of factors, the flat cap. Does Thanksgiving have the same meaning to you? When you look at the standings, I'm actually writing a piece, Eastern Western Conference. Are you cooked or not? But do you think it's different?
I see what you did there. Yeah, I see what you did there.
Anyway.
I don't. By the way, Mike, is Scott still asked very long questions on your podcast every week? I'm just curious because.
Well, he gives it gives me the opportunity to really formulate my response, and it's greatly appreciated. I'm not very good at thinking on my feet, so that way I can get the hamster going in the brain, and we're off and running.
I have actually fallen asleep during some of his questions over the years, but I'm going to try and not do that today.
So back to the.
So what were you asking? Oh yeah, okay. So I don't think it's as relevant this year myself. You can agree to disagree, but I actually think because the season started later than normal, right? At least 7 to 10 days in some teams' cases. Yeah. We didn't get the early October start. Teams started anywhere from October 13th to 17th. Calgary didn't play till the Saturday, I think. So I think it's not quite the same demarcation point. I also think because of the uncertainty with the COVID cases still popping up on different teams, and you don't know if you're a GM, if or when that's going to happen to your team over the next few months. I just think there's more uncertainty in the season still, that you can't do your traditional, this is who we are right now, in my opinion. And the other thing is half the teams in a league are at the cap. So even if you wanted to do something, it's very difficult right now. It's dollar in, dollar out until you get closer to the March 21st trade deadline, when finally there's a bit more cap flexibility, as we know, with the AAV being easier to absorb. So, I don't even know, Scott, if you're looking to shake up your team, how much maneuverability that you have as a GM right now.
Yeah, that's, I look at it from the player's perspective that we always, come Thanksgiving time, I think nobody in a locker room ever wanted to admit you were out, even though the stats tended to bear that out. And I do agree with you, Pierre, that I think the uncertainty leads to it this year. The cap does as well. But I do think it's still a good guideline. I mean, if you're not in the playoff picture by Thanksgiving, even though we started a week later, it's time to go. And I do think that there's a bit of a mirage effect because of what we saw with the St. Louis Blues in 2018. We
can all do that. We can all do that.
Sure. You got this big bell curve of life of statistical, reality. And then here were the Blues that season, last in the league, fire a coach, come in, all of a sudden Jordan Binnington carries the team, they win a Stanley Cup. And it kind of makes you look with rose-colored glasses, the same way as everybody seemed to think that the Kraken were going to be good this year, like Vegas. That's not happening. But I wonder for especially Scott and Pierre, for you guys have spent so much time in press box, in arenas, and those are things that I never had a chance to feel as a player. You can only take the pulse of people around you. Do you have a feeling when you walk into the building, when it's a team that's kind of teetering or maybe out, do you sense that nervousness when you're upstairs in the box, even just speaking within management, scouts, those types of people?
I always base that on the quality of the snacks they give us in the press box as to whether a franchise is teetering. No, I'm just kidding, Mike. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do. I mean, you know, who's at the morning skates, and this is more of a pre-pandemic comment. I mean, these days it's still so different on NHL rinks, as you guys know. The flexibility to meet with people still isn't there, at least here in Toronto. So I don't find myself still in rinks as much as I used to be because the networking availability isn't really there. But it used to be, certainly. I think, I don't know what Scotty thinks, but you walk into a morning skate and you could see the look on a GM or a coach's face for sure as to how things are going right now and whether or not they want to chit chat and what they have to say. No question. I mean, we're human beings, and no matter how careful you are and what you want to say on or off the record when you're running a team or coaching a team, sometimes it's just body language says it all. And I think there's no question about that.
Yeah, well, and it's the same. Pierre's right. I mean, I don't know whether we'll ever get back to it, but the vibe of going into a locker room at a morning skate or an off day practice, and invariably the team that's going well, guys are hanging around, and you've got people are happy to chat. Now there's some people like to me, a guy like Barry Trotz is always going to be. Like he gets it. So you can always have a conversation with Barry Trotz in normal times. But yeah, no, I think there's a definite, teams that are struggling or, guys, if they're under the gun, then often it's harder to find people. Well, Mike, you've been in those locker rooms. I mean, if you're on a team that is struggling, or maybe there's a lot of external pressure or controversy or stuff going on, like, are guys hiding? Are they scurrying out the back door? Like I always felt that. Well, I covered the Leafs for a couple of years. I felt that every day. It didn't matter. They were with guys were trying to get out the back door, but what's it like from the player side? I think Pierre's right. It's human nature.
Yeah, it really matters your role within the team. I mean, and you can see how it can wear down leaders. Where you just have to face the music day in, day out, same answer, same question. Can't you get the power play going? Well, we're working on it. Like, it's just tiresome. It's not as fun. And it always amazed me, the teams I was on that had leaders that could just shrug it off and do it every day, automatic. I mean, I played in Arizona when we were god awful, and Shane Doan would just stand up there and face the music. Nothing fazed that guy. Yeah. And it's just like, man, what a leader, and I think the depth guys are just nervous in general. You always think you're on the block if you're a depth guy. And then you when things are going sideways, you're going, oh man, I better not book that U-Haul for the end of the year, or I better not extend this lease. Like, these are the things that you think about. Yeah. But I had a quick follow-up there to wonder, like, has there been anybody that was particularly stoic that you just couldn't get a read, like whether a GM or a coach, like, that, whether good, bad, and different, ultimate poker face? Is there anybody in the game that really struck you that way?
I mean, I've enjoyed my chats over the years with Lou Lamoriello for sure. And with Lou Lamoriello, you get a pretty honest answer, regardless of where his team has been in the standings, for sure. I mean, and I think a lot of that has been his leadership and the way that rubs off on everyone else in the organization. And that's not nothing, because right now the Islanders have not lived up to billing so far this year. Now they played first 13 games of the year on the road, of course, waiting for the rink to open. But that does rub off when you have someone, as you said, Mike, that's stoic. Lou Lamoriello, to me, has always been a stoic leader, that no matter how things are going on the team that he runs, that there will never be panic, that, there'll be a steady hand at the wheel. And that's the first name that comes to mind for me, for sure.
Yeah, and he's not stoic. In fact, he may be in some ways the opposite. But I was, for me, I always loved a conversation with Paul. There was always, and he wasn't rationalizing why, if his teams weren't playing well, or rationalizing why things were going on. There was here's how I view it. Here's what we're trying to do. Yes, this, and not throwing guys under the bus. It was just a real. Maybe it's the Windsor connection, but I always enjoy Paul Maurice because there's a certain honesty about can't control everything, right? Like, at your point, Mike, well, if we could fix the power play, we'd fix the damn thing. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So,
yeah. And I do think Paul Maurice is the most thoughtful interview among coaches in the NHL. And there's a lot of good ones. I mean, John Cooper, Barry Trotz, Dave Tippett. There's a lot of guys that I enjoy hearing from. But my point about thoughtful is that Paul Maurice will listen to the question and really try to answer it in depth. And he coaches in the Canadian market where there's a lot of coverage, there's a lot of tough coverage. And Mike, I'm not taking anything away from what you said about Shane Doan, because he's one of the great guys that I've gotten to know over the years and such a thoughtful person himself. But when you're playing in Arizona, you're not exactly getting the volume of questions that you're getting in
No
Winnipeg.
doubt. That's very real.
Right.
100%. That's real.
So,
absolutely.
I always think about those things too. Pat Quinn,
yes,
God bless his soul. I mean,
anniversary of his passing, if I'm not
right,
mistaken.
7 years ago. And boy, when he was coaching both Vancouver and Toronto, oh yeah, he might get in your face and you might go back and forth, but he'd fill your notebook every day. I mean, there was something interesting. I learned something from Pat Quinn almost every day, right? He was such an interesting guy and a smart guy, and I just have a lot of time for that type of person.
Yeah. So we raise the Thanksgiving line in the sand, whether it's more permeable or whatever this year than other years. And Pierre, you mentioned the Islanders. Is there a team that you look at the things, look at the standings and where they're at, and you think Thanksgiving, you think, okay, I don't know what's going to happen with this team. Are the Islanders that team for you, or is there another team you're looking at going, man, the rubber's got to hit the road pretty quickly here?
Well, I obviously, like a lot of people, have a lot of concern about the Islanders, but I also think let's let them even out the home and road schedule. I mean, it's crazy the way they've had to play their year. Obviously, between the COVID scare that's still ongoing and the massive injuries that they've had, everything seems to be lining up against them. But I can't help but believe in this team when you consider what they did the last couple of years and the coaching staff. I think they get back in a fight over time. Now, the really tough thing for them is the division they're in.
Yeah,
there's no easy games in that division, boy.
Last place in the Metro today.
Yeah. And that's a tough division to climb back into. That's the one concern I probably have more, is not so much that I don't think they're going to play better hockey as they get healthier. I think they will, but is the hole too deep given the quality around them in the Metro?
Yeah, I have real concerns about the Islanders. And like you said, Barry Trotz has always got his team, if not in playoffs, right at the edge. Like even those poor expansion teams in Nashville, he was able to carry them. I mean, I was part of that organization in an ancillary role as a draft pick, but you keep track of the team. And I kept thinking, like, how are they doing that with this roster? Well, it comes down to structure and discipline and leadership. And Trotz has always gotten a team there. I just really am concerned about their scoring. Barzell's not where he needs to be. Beauvillier hasn't performed like he should. Like, they're just underperforming in general. You're hoping that coming home can change that. There's a lot of hope for me for the Islanders because they should be better. The team that I've got my eye on, especially in the East, is Boston. Like, I know that they're only 2 points out of a playoff spot. And I think that this is a team that's probably trending where they should to. But, like, Taylor Hall's been okay. Like, there's a lot of okay going on in Boston. And there's always that expectation. When's it going to really click? When do they take off? When's Pasternak going to score again?
When Tuukka Rask signs with them in the second half?
And boy, Pierre, you're just so clairvoyant, because that's what I think is missing. I think they're missing their rock. Do you have that feeling as well?
I mean, I still think Ullmark's a pretty good goalie, but it's just that he's in a new place, still feeling his way around, I think. But yeah, if Tuukka Rask comes back, I think that's just gonna rev up that dressing room. But on the other hand, I mean, listen, I thought the bottom was going to fall out a bit for them because they've been so good for so long last year, and I was completely wrong. Yeah. It's just, you almost get the feeling like it's never going to happen. As long as Patrice Bergeron is playing, maybe the Bruins are always competitive, but I actually thought it was going to start to get them last year, but we're actually seeing it now, to your point, Mike. But I do think if Tuukka Rask does come back and sign with the Bruins in the second half at some point, and then you got a Rask-Ullmark tandem, boy, that's pretty solid as long as they can stay healthy. But they're not getting the same offensive balance. I mean, listen, they're always top heavy with that top line, but I still think you're not seeing as much from the second and third line that you need to be competitive. And even though the Atlantic's not the Metro, still pretty interesting at the top there, because if Florida keeps doing what it's doing, and then you got the two-time Cup champions Tampa, you got the Leafs rolling, Boston at some point's got to roll up the sleeves there and say, we want to get in this thing too. And we get in this thing as a top 3 seed in the Atlantic, or do we have to get in as a wild card, which is not that easy when you look at all the teams in the Metro doing their thing. So I think there is some heat on Boston to steady itself here.
So, I mean, the one team that Mike and I know we traded notes on it this morning, and I don't think.
Wow, you guys trade notes before? Mike, you are an upgrade over me in the podcast world. I mean,
I wasn't even going to mention that. I wasn't even going to mention that. But no,
it's a goalie thing. It's a college thing, man. Like, it's just, you got to prep and do your notes, and it's why I can't ever sleep at night.
I mean, listen, I went to college, but it was pre-internet. So, a long time ago.
Yeah. Pierre and I went to the same university, just several decades apart. So, but no, I don't think there's anyone in hockey who's really concerned about the Colorado Avalanche who sit outside a playoff spot at Thanksgiving necessarily. But to me, they're an interesting team for a number of reasons. I thought it was critical that Jared Bednar gets the contract extension.
I agree.
Really important signal, right? I mean, I don't think anyway. It was
but that was the old 2-year, not 3 to 4 year extension, which I thought was interesting. Anyway, just thought I'd slide that
anyway.
In there.
And of course, no Nathan McKinnon at this stage, and and how, for me, I had this conversation. My son's home from college, and we were watching hockey last night, and I quizzed him. I said, who's 4th overall in NHL scoring? He's got 23 points. 4th overall.
Nazem Kadri.
There you go. Nazem, what a great story for a guy who's got a lot of baggage, and he's, like the whole team still
terrific
has to
player. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So are you? And I watched them play that game against Ottawa the other night, and it's like, oh my God, last possession wins that game 7-5 at the end for the Avs. Pierre, are you like any level of concern there, or is this one of those teams?
Zero.
Zero.
Yeah, zero. Because I think between the COVID cases they had early in the season and the injuries and this and that, they're just sort of, this reminds me of some of those great teams we've had over the years, whether it's a Washington or a Pittsburgh, where it's like, you just know that, okay, just find your level when it matters and get going come playoff time. Colorado is going to get going. I guess the one question I'd have, and Mike's in a better position to answer it, is whether Darcy Kemper seems to be fighting it at times here. Mm-hmm. And obviously enormous pressure on him, not just because, he's replacing Philip Grubauer, who had a couple of great years in Colorado, although Grubauer right now probably wishes didn't leave, but his own future is up in the air after this year for Darcy Kemper. His deal's up, and the opportunity is golden right now for him. I mean, geez, go out and win a cup in Colorado, and you can write your own ticket. But from afar, when I'm watching the Avs, it seems to me that Darcy Kemper's fighting it a bit right now. Yeah,
and I've kind of been onto this, and it's funny because I picked him as my Vezina winner this year because I expected Colorado to be that strong out of the gate and give him the support structure. But I did have question marks even in my own head because last season in Arizona, I didn't see the same Darcy Kemper, and I chalked it up though to him having health issues, battling through some things. And I figured coming into this year, okay, he's going to be healthy, he's going to be on a great team, like contract year, all that stuff. It's not always easy to change teams, especially Arizona, as strong as they could play defensively. I know they couldn't score well, but I mean, Talk always had that team playing D. The kill was good, and it was built around Kemper. Well, Avalanche aren't built around Kemper. Okay, they're built around Makar and McKinnon and every other huge name and huge contract. And I think that he struggled, honestly. And I do think, though, that there's room for him to adjust to his team. I've been on teams before where it took me until mid-December before I finally got it, because I went from team to team. Look at my closet here, guys. There's jerseys everywhere. So there's an adjustment.
Some of those are from the same year, I think. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, 1 year, 5 of them. So, and by the way, if you know where my white Vancouver Canucks jersey is, please let me know. I'd love to get that at some point.
There you go.
But so, yeah, I think that Kemper, it's taken a bit, but I was worried about Colorado 2-3 weeks ago. I'm not anymore at all. I think Cale Makar's the MVP of that team. People will bury me for that, but that guy's sick. And McKenna,
I got breaking news. He's going to make the Canadian Olympic team. Breaking news.
Yeah, no surprise.
So I think Kemper's going to be okay, but and he was so good at Scotty's favorite tournament, the World Championships last June, when that unheralded Canadian team coached by Gerald Gallant won the gold, and Darcy Kemper stood on his head. But let's also be, truthful. I hope we always are, but truthful about how Colorado ended up with him. He was not plan A. I mean,
No.
I've written about this a couple of times, but that whole 48-hour period in late July was fascinating for the goalie carousel. Number one, they went into the 11th inning trying to re-sign Grubauer way into July 28th, the first day of free agency. At one point, Colorado thought they were pretty much almost there. But plan B before the market opened that day was Freddie Anderson. Colorado had talked to Claude Lemieux, of course, Claude Lemieux and Joe Sakic, very close friends, former teammates. I think the Avs were going to pivot to Freddie Anderson had the stars sort of aligned better time-wise that day, but it didn't because when the market opened, Freddie Anderson can't wait. He has to, so he went to Carolina. Colorado was trying to sign Grubauer. Like, geez, that went till at least 5 or 6 in the afternoon Eastern time before Grubauer signed in Seattle, I think.
Yep.
And then finally, plan C, after all the goalies are gone, free agent wise, pretty much, they overpay through the nose. And Bill Armstrong in Arizona was patient that day, and it worked out for him. And trade a boatful, a lot of assets to get Darcy Kuemper out of Arizona. But let's be honest, that was not the plan.
Yeah,
that was not the original plan for the Colorado Avalanche entering that offseason.
Right.
But if they win the Stanley Cup, what does it matter? That's
Exactly.
what you're always going to look at, right? When it comes down to it, did they pay too much? And Kuemper may have a great second half. We'll see.
But so just before we move on, then I'm curious because I think Joe Sakic has emerged as one of the best GMs in the NHL, and I think it's fair to say, it was a learning curve for him, but his patience and the whole how he maneuvered through that Matt Duchene deal and his patience, and you're right, Pierre. He had to pivot. He still ended up with an elite goaltender, but I just think that he's done such a nice job there. Oh my God, that team's they're so stocked, but there's a lot of pressure on this team, right? They collapsed against Vegas. It was like, okay, well, where's the leadership? Like, how did that happen? And I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on this team this season. And I wonder if that leads to, it's Joe Sakic have to, I've looked twice now during this podcast because I can't remember Johansson's first name. Anyway, the backup in
Jonas
Johansson. Yep. With all due respect to him, there's no real plan B in goal. So, does Joe Sakic have to look at, what about Marc-Andre Fleury? Pending UFA, things pretty up and down in Chicago. That team has no chance to make the playoffs in my mind. Do you think how much pressure will there be to, okay, if it's not Darcy Kuemper, do we upgrade our plan B?
I think you have to. I think you're all in on Kuemper at this point. I mean, Marc-Andre Fleury is a $7 million AAV. Even on March 21st, how easy is that to shoehorn? And I think, quite frankly, Joe Sakic might get elbowed on the way to the podium by Ken Holland in the Marc-Andre Fleury race in this race. And I don't know that for sure, but to me, if you're talking about a team that has a chance to win, and to me, Colorado's still the most talented team in the league for me anyway. You guys could disagree when they're healthy, but Edmonton's doing something pretty special out of the gates here. And Mike Smith, when healthy, has been terrific the last couple of years, but if you get close to March 21st and Marc-Andre Fleury indicates the Blackhawks that he's open to a move, how is Edmonton not in that group of teams phoning? I mean, I think he's the perfect fit. And I want to underline the fact that I think the Blackhawks, even though Marc-Andre Fleury only has a 10-team no trade list, I think the Blackhawks are going to be super sensitive to Fleury's desires here.
Yeah, they have to be.
He moved his family to Chicago. He needed some convincing to get the Chicago from Vegas. And so all roads lead through, what Marc-Andre Fleury and his family want closer to March 21st.
Yeah, he's going to hold the cards there. I mean, and Chicago's got to play that right with him. Let him make a decision if he wants to go somewhere. And I mean, I will say though, and he may not at all, but I will say in Edmonton, I'm a huge proponent of homegrown goalies, man. And I'm telling you, if Stuart Skinner can be performing for the next couple months, it makes things easier on Ken Holland.
He's played well.
And, once again, you still look to the Binnington effect, right? This is a guy that carried us. It came from within. I think teams are a little bit more comfortable with that now. And really, I got one more for you here, Pierre, that we'll talk about quickly. When I wanted to ask about the Vezina race, and maybe not as much who this year we think might take it, because I think Bobrovsky's going to be the guy leading now because he's got some clout. It's not just because he's on the first place team. It's not just because he's played so well. It's because he's won twice before. And now I know the general managers vote on this, but I think that Scott, you and Pierre have much more insight into the process and into the runway leading to who wins the Vezina, because I think it's determined by January. By the end of January, you have your Vezina winner. Do you disagree or agree with that coaches and GMs and organizations, once they have it in their mind who the front runner is, it's tough to unseat that person?
Yeah, and it is a GM vote, and I was disappointed in the GMs last year that UC Saros wasn't a finalist. I'm not
totally
saying
agree.
That they should have
totally
won,
agree.
But I thought he carried Nashville Predators. And,
he did.
I wonder if Igor Shesterkin, if the Rangers keep winning games and give up scoring chances like they have been, and Shesterkin keeps doing what he's doing, what about Igor Shesterkin as a wild card candidate this year if he keeps it up? I mean,
we're looking to him as goalie coaches as Shesterkin. He's our guy now. It was Carey Price. When I coach goalies, I'm showing them Shesterkin. The way this guy skates, how controlled he is.
Hold on, I just got a call. It's Andrei Vasilevsky. Oh yeah,
it's fine. Nobody has the same the mental athleticism that Vasilevsky plays with is something that we know we can't teach as a goalie coach. So you have to look to somebody who's a little bit more controlled.
now the aforementioned Freddie Anderson's having a heck of a year for the first place Carolina Hurricanes. So he's got an interesting bid going on early on.
Markstrom as well.
Yes. Yeah. Just wrote about the Flames this week, and man, it's not just that Markstrom has been so good, but the way the Flames are suffocating the middle of the ice. It's amazing. Daryl Sutter Hockey 101 is happening in Calgary right now. To answer your question though, on the GM vote, it has changed. It used to be that GMs really, like, you had to really lose your grip on the Vezina. Like the tie always went to the seniority, right? I mean, Patrick Waugh, Marty Brodeur, Dominic Hasek, guys really had their hands on it for a long time. And I'm seeing a lot of one-offs. I mean, there are a lot of guys winning their first Vezina, and I think this wave of GMs is a little more open to the new guy, and so it's interesting. Now, Fleury won the Vezina last year, of course, kind of a wide open year, but I think it's harder to predict now, Mike, to answer your question, than it used to be with the GM vote.
So one of the guys, nobody mentioned James Reimer, got a .940 save percentage, but anyway, I don't love James Reimer. Pierre, we had him on our podcast last season.
Super guy,
yeah, really good guy, and what a great story for him in San Jose. But you live in Toronto, and I know you don't cover the Leafs, but you have a sense of that marketplace. The guy that for me,
Jack Campbell,
944 save percentage,
another Vezina candidate for sure.
Well, Jack. Well, let's open the scope. Vezina trophy, and where does he fit into Team USA? I know. Listen, Mike and I've talked about it. Mike's really thinks Thatcher Demko is a terrific young goaltender. You got John Gibson, obviously, former Vezina trophy
Connor
winner,
Hellebuck.
Connor Hellebuck. But
who's going like this?
Jack Campbell's story is the one that keeps giving, right? I mean, there's no drop off, and I thought there might have been after the playoff loss to Montreal. But what's the vibe in Toronto about Jack Campbell?
Can Team Canada borrow one of those guys, by the way, for the Olympics? No, the vibe is through the roof positive for Jack Campbell. The fans love him. The media love him. His teammates love him. Jack Campbell is an incredible story. He's just such an easy guy to root for. He's in that mix right now too. They only, to me, it's not about whether he can continue to play as well as he is. To me, the question mark is, can he stay healthy? I mean, because that's been that's sort of been what has dragged them down at times. But what a story! And by the way, I hate to be that contract guy. His deal is up at the end of the year on a team with zero cap room, who just signed Morgan Riley to a big extension. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. His agent is Kurt Overhart, and who's a tough negotiator. Now, a lot of it will come down that I'm guessing Jack Campbell's pretty happy where his career has really come alive. But when you consider that Cal Peterson just got 3 years, 5 million AAV from the LA Kings, having played at the time when he signed it, just I think like 53 NHL games or something in that range.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what's Jack Campbell worth after a season like this and after last year's coming out party for him? I don't know, at least 5 million a year, don't you think?
Oh, easily. I think it's more of a question of how, like you said, how comfortable is he? You know,
Right.
And I do think it's better to have somebody within your stable than having to go shopping on the open market.
Mhm.
I do think there's value in that, but he's going to be a 6 guy if he continues this. I just don't know term on it. And that's, I never thought I'd say that about Jack Campbell after watching him play in the American League, whatever, 8
Mhm.
years ago. This is a guy I didn't think could make it in the American League. I'm a believer now. It's taken me a long time because I had those distant memories. He's played awesome. And it does.
Right.
It comes down to if he can stay healthy. I love hearing him talk. He's so the humility and just the appreciation for the big stage. It's awesome.
Right. Obviously, term will be a big part too. His age, you know, he's still, I think he's 29, but a 3-year deal looks different than a 5-year deal, AAV wise, of course.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, for the Leafs, market wise, a recent signing that could, whereas the Cal Peterson signing, I know burns the Leafs, I think, internally, because they know that's going to be brought up by Kurt Overhart. On the other hand, if I'm the Leafs, I'm using the Saros extension as my counter, because Saros, who has been at it longer in terms of being an elite netminder, right? He signed for $5 million a year with Nashville. And if I'm the Leafs, I use that contract and say, well, have you shown yourself yet to be at the same level of Saros consistently for 3-4 years, right? So it's an interesting thing, I think. Can't wait to see what he signs for.
Not to remind Leaf fans who haven't, of course, seen a playoff victory since before the 04-05 lockout, but we're talking about an extension for a goaltender who, like the rest of that talented team, has done squat. So, like, is he the guy? Is he the guy? And I think the question is, it's not even whether can Jack Campbell lead you to a Stanley Cup, although ultimately that question has to be answered by somebody.
But he can't wear that first round loss against Montreal. I think was this a safe percentage like 934 or something?
He can't wear it, but he has to wear it because he plays in Toronto.
Right.
Yeah, like
straight up, man. You will be blamed no matter what as a goalie.
And certainly the memory of Game 7, unfortunately. And I thought Jack Campbell was really good in that series, but the memory is that Brendan Gallagher opening goal in Game 7.
That's right.
And that's a tough one because you can't give that up against the other guy at the other end of the ice in that Game 7, right?
And that's what's going to hang on a goalie's head. He didn't make the big save at the big time. Okay, I can show you 1,000 goalies like that who had to go through that before they eventually won. Not 1,000. Right. Let's pare that down to 10. But I see, Pierre, my goalie union card is just
I love it, man.
It clouds my brain, but I'm on this mission to defend the boys.
Hey, remember, I work with Noodles at TSN, so I'm used to the goalie card.
You're in good company.
All right, we'll let you go. I mean, it's been fun, but I know you got things.
I could go all day.
Yeah, well,
I do have to go shopping for my U.S. Thanksgiving party.
Okay, but so in behind you, there's a picture over your left shoulder, picture of Marty Brodeur after the gold medal win in
Salt Lake City.
Okay. The big question I have: who is your favorite Olympic roommate? Well, of all the Olympics you covered, who's your favorite Olympic roommate?
Well, it's got to be you, Scotty, from the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. We shared, at least it was a suite, not just a single room, but we shared space for 3.5 weeks in Vancouver at was it the Best Western or the Travel Lodge in downtown Vancouver? I can't remember.
I don't know. I'm not throwing ESPN under the bus, but boy, it was not upscale.
It sounds sub-luxurious.
So I'll give Scotty credit because when we got to this room, the bedroom had 2 beds. And then there were very close to each other. And then there was a living room with the pull-out couch. And Scotty looked at me and says, "I'm sleeping in the pull-out couch for these Olympics." So we gave each other breathing room during these. But I woke up every day during those Olympics with pieces of pepperoni in my shoes every single morning. Scotty thought it was very funny that he would put pieces of pepperoni sticks in my shoes every morning to see how I would react. Now, I don't know if you've covered an Olympics, Mike, but at the end of an Olympics, after you work 16, 18 hours a day, and maybe have one too many bevies at the end of the night as well on top of it, you're a bit tired. And the 27th day where he put pepperoni sticks in my shoes is the closest I've ever come to pulling the hockey shirt over his head and going at it. Now, so he said, okay, I'm done with it. I'm not going to do it again. So on the last day where we're traveling out of Vancouver, he didn't do it.
Going to the trade deadline.
Yes, we were traveling to Toronto, and my shoes were clean. Scotty did not put pepperoni sticks in my shoes on the final day. We get back home again, dog tired. I open my suitcase, and there are pieces of pepperoni all over my clothes in my suitcase because Scotty had waited till I was in the shower that day. We were packing and opened my suitcase, which I had closed, and put pepperoni sticks all over my suitcase.
Yeah. Might have been those, and some of those red cheese rounds too. I put them in there too.
Baby boys. Yeah. Well, all this is doing is preparing me for any future road trips, room sharing I may have with Scotty. I got to be ready for it. And I got to have the OxyClean ready when I come home because we know pepperoni's greasy and it leaves that little like orange stain.
Yeah. It was mostly just the hard ends of the pepperoni sticks. So that was too much. But
really bizarre behavior.
Mike and I are covering All-Star in Vegas, Pierre. So, but I'm pretty sure that Frank's going to be
not sharing a room. Okay.
We're not sharing a room. But anyway, it's good to know that. All right. Listen, it's terrific to catch up with you, and thank you for coming and this and stories. And who do you like? Who do you like? Cowboys? Can they pull it? That was not a good performance against Canada. Do they bounce back against Vegas?
Well, I actually didn't mind how they played defensively because I was pretty worried of Mahomes, and because I was actually at the game in Vegas when Mahomes destroyed the Raiders the Sunday night before, and so I was a little worried about that happening. Yeah, but at least the Cowboys defense played well last Sunday, but their offense was brutal. I think they win at home against the Raiders. I think the Raiders are walking around like their season's blowing up, and I think the Cowboys rebound and win on U.S. Thanksgiving, and I'll be a happy man.
All right.
I miss you, man.
Yeah.
I miss you.
Yeah. No, it's like old times.
At least you upgraded your podcast teammate. I'm happy for that.
Oh, jeez. That's completely up for debate.
Anyway, have a great Thanksgiving. All the best to your family, my friend. And we'll say we've got some business to discuss down the road. I owe Pierre dinner, Mike, after a failed.
I wasn't going to mention it.
I'm all right with that.
Little fantasy football head-to-head matchup. Yeah, it did not go your way.
No, they get Taco Bell in Canada. It's all right. All right.
Hey, I'll take it.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Pierre.
Yeah. Love you, man. See you guys.
Yeah, take care. All right, Mike, that was a ton of fun. And before we get into our final thoughts of this episode of The Suitcase and the Scribe, a reminder that DoorDash, let's see, we were talking about dinner. That's a pretty good segue, isn't it? DoorDash is the proud sponsor of the Nation Network of podcasts, restaurants, and more delivered right to your door. You'll get a food theme. Mike, what's on the McKenna Thanksgiving menu? Is there a special McKenna dish? Is there and I know you're a foodie. Yeah, I know this.
That's a really bougie term. It's I actually don't like foodie because it makes you sound elitist.
Yeah, no, and I didn't mean it that way. But you appreciate good food. So
your heart's in the right place. But no, I do. I mean, I love to cook as well. And so Thanksgiving's my favorite. And I don't go crazy, like I get Food and Wine magazine, Bon Appetit magazine. I see all these like out there wild recipes for Thanksgiving. I'm just like, nah, man, give me the green bean casserole and the mashed potatoes and the turkey. Like, give me the straight up Thanksgiving favorites. That's what I want. But I have tried to really nail down my turkey recipe. I'm smoking a turkey. I've got a 13 pounder that, I'm going to get it dry brine tonight, hit it with the salt, get the rub on it, and do it with cherry wood tomorrow, and try to get the skin nice and crispy. And so we'll see. Like I'm still playing with the recipe. I just got to make sure I don't overcook it. I got to have my temperature probes in it to make sure I pull that baby at about 160 and let it rest for a while. But now how do you smoke it? Do you have a
green egg type thing, or do you smoke it on do you have some sort of device, or what do you do?
Well, I most people now are using pellet grills. I think pellet grills are for posers. I'm just being facetious here. Actually, pellet grills are a great way for people to start barbecuing and smoking. I just say that to be a mean person, but I have a little aluminum grill called a PK grill. Okay. And this baby retains heat. You bank the coals to one side, you do some offset cooking, smoking, you put the turkey on the other side. And I use live fire, charcoal, lump charcoal, chunks of whatever wood I want. I'll probably use cherry wood tomorrow for the turkey. And it doesn't take long. I mean, 3-4 hours and it's done. You actually want to smoke poultry at a higher temperature than you would ribs or pork butt or brisket. You want that lower temp. Well, chicken, poultry, turkey, you want that to be higher so the skin can get crispy and it can absorb the smoke faster. So there's little techniques here and there, but I stuff it with all the herbs in the world, put some butter under the skin. Oh, I can't wait. I just love it.
So do this, take a picture, and I know it's a podcast, but because we do have the video, when we do this when we reconvene next Wednesday, maybe a little picture, or maybe just tweet it out, because maybe people are listening and they'll want to know how it goes. But
as long as I don't burn it, I will. Because last year I got a little bit over. So we'll flip it back here. I mean, like, Scotty, I got some questions for you. Okay. I mean, I know that recently this week you talked to a couple people in Anaheim, and we've been giving them some love.
Yep.
And Troy Terry, man, like, who saw this coming? Like, he's now in contention for the Olympic team. He's ripping it up. You talked to them in Anaheim. Dallas Eakins, if I'm not mistaken. So what's going on out there?
It was great. It was a great week because I spoke to a bunch of people I hadn't talked to in a while. I talked to Brian Giunta, who played with Troy Terry in the 18 Olympics, because, of course, the NHL players weren't in South Korea. And Troy Terry came out. He was part of, I think there were 3 college kids who came and played on that team. Brian Giunta.
Jordan Greenway was another one in Minnesota.
Exactly. And Donato, I believe. Ryan Donato. So it was great talking to Brian, because they become quite close, Troy Terry and Brian Giunta, as a result of that. And I talked to Pierre, mentioned Kurt Overhart, who's from Denver. His son grew up playing youth hockey with Troy Terry, played on a travel team with Cal Foote, Adam Foote's son. Adam coached, and actually Joe Sakic coached briefly in Denver. So it's kind of a cool story that way. And you know, the interesting thing, and I'm not sure, my understanding is Troy wasn't on the long list for Team USA, which will prevent him from being on the US Olympic team, but he is, I think he's tied now with Kyle Connor as the top scoring American player in the NHL right now, and just finished I wish I had it in front of me, 16 game point streak for the Ducks. And when I talked to Troy, it's such a humble, really thoughtful kid. And his relationship with Dallas Eakins, whom he met when he got sent down from the Ducks 2 or 3 years ago to San Diego to the AHL team. And I think Dallas Eakins has been instrumental in Troy Terry, you know, putting things in perspective, right? I mean, Troy talked about how he never wanted to be sent down and how he always felt that he is capable of being an impact NHL player from the get-go.
There was a lot of self-belief and confidence there.
Yeah.
And that may have been to his detriment.
Yeah. And I don't know which, and maybe whatever the factor was, it didn't work out that way.
Right.
And he had to learn not to beat himself up. And so we talked about, there is this element of, holy cow, who the heck is Troy Terry, who had an outstanding World Junior tournament a few years back and all those things. Yeah. But he's really had to, he's physically matured, obviously, as he has gotten older. But he's matured mentally, and we talked about his relationship with Ryan Getzlaf. And I think Dallas Eakins has done a great job with that Ducks team. There's been some off-ice stuff that you and I've talked about in terms of, in terms of the management with Bob Murray being forced out and going into alcohol rehabilitation and all those kinds of things. Dallas Eakins deserves a lot of credit. Yeah. And it's a long answer. It's longer than some of my questions, but I think the fascinating part of, is this Ducks team, can they maintain that? And I like those young players. You talked a couple of weeks ago about, having talked to Kevin Shattenkirk and those young team players on the team, but the young blue line, the next month or 6 weeks up to the Olympic break, I think will be critical to are you ready? The grind of it, and can you keep pace with Calgary and Edmonton? I think it's going to be hard for 4 teams in the Pacific to make the playoffs. I think it's more likely 5 going to the playoffs from Central. So it's critical for the Ducks to stay in that top 3. And I don't know, with Vegas coming, can they do that? So that's, it's going to be a real challenge, but I like that team a lot. And I think Dallas Eakins deserves a lot of credit, and certainly Troy Terry, maybe one of the great, the great stories of, this up to Thanksgiving here.
Yeah, I think that you look at Dallas Eakins at this point kind of being a shepherd in some ways, speaking to the players. And that's a progression too. We talked about that with Pierre earlier. How about how you progress through your thinking and your play? Well, I mean, he's learned an awful lot since his first stint as a head coach when he coached the Edmonton Oilers. And going to the American League is not a bad thing. It's a good thing in some cases. Troy Terry, a chance to play, a chance to regain form. And I always thought about him, and I thought about that World Juniors where he scored about 15 5-hole goals in a row in the shootout, and he ripped up the tournament. And I thought, this guy's a can't miss prospect.
Yep.
And then watching him for Anaheim last year, and so often, because I was covering Vegas, I saw Anaheim a lot. Like, he just was a non-factor, and there'd be little glimpses where he'd drive the net, and you think that's what you need to see. Well, he's doing that consistently now. He's getting to open ice now, and he just looks like a different player. And whether that's the Eakins effect or it's just him figuring it out, he's playing phenomenal. And Shattenkirk, what he said that I found to be really prescient and interesting was that, hey, the young guys will say it's me and I'll say it's them. That just shows to me that it's a whole team pulling together.
Yeah, no, I think you hit on that.
And I'm telling you, man, they don't have Bob Murray staring over their shoulder anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's real. I think there's a bump from that they feel free now. Okay. Yeah. If everything that we're hearing was going on, that's not a workplace that's fun. Like, it starts to kind of make sense, So I'm bullish on them. I think they're going to be in contention for playoffs. I don't know if they make it, but man, I think they'll be right there, and I'm pulling for them. And the other topic I want to hit, how about Jarvis in Carolina, Seth?
Yeah. Good story, right? I mean, we've
prolific.
There's been it's been a hard season, right? Been a lot of hard truths that we've had to confront, and the continues to need to confront all those things. So it's nice to celebrate a story like Troy Terry and a young kid who's really getting it in a marketplace that has had some tough times. And Seth Jarvis is another great story, a rookie who earned his way on to one of the best teams in the NHL. And earned his way to the first line, Scott. I didn't get the chance to hear it, and I'd like to go back today at some point. But my sense, if I get social media correct, always a bit of a danger. But I think yesterday, because he's playing in his 10th game, so he's not being sent back to junior. That's not going to happen. And I think Rod Brindamore asked Seth Jones to sort of, he sort of mark the moment during their practice. They're in Seattle. And again, I think that's another acknowledgement of, talk about atmosphere around a team and culture and identity. I think though, how many coaches would take the time to say, this is a big day for one of our guys. Yeah. And we're going to make note of that. And you'd like to think a lot of coaches would do it. I'm not sure they would.
Yeah. And I think it kind of goes both ways. I mean, there's respect there from Brindamore to the player, and the player to Brindamore. It's symbiotic, and I mean, just watching how Jarvis plays, he fits right in. He would not be trusted on a top line with Aho and Teravainen if Brindamore didn't think he could do the job. And he's starting them in all 3 zones.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's try him on the penalty kill. Let's try him here. And he's responded. Like, when I watch him, his hockey IQ is really high, and he picks up on things fast, but you can see like the routes that he takes, the gaps that he has, they're wise beyond his years. And, players can have great scoring touch and not score goals because they can't get open. And how simple does this sound? Well, I watched Jarvis, man, he just little deceptive moves, peel off, find that open ice, puck's on and off his blade, it's in the net. Like, I don't know if he has the best release in the world, but he releases it and it goes in. And I'm impressed. And I think it's a cool story. And, yet again, like you said, another moment in Carolina history where we're talking about Brindamore and culture and everything going the right direction. And, you wish more teams could have that.
Yeah. Buddy, this has been great. It's like when Pierre said, we could do this all day, but I know you got some prep to do. I want you to I hope you and your family have a great, great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the moments. And I can't wait till we reconvene next Wednesday. But as always, great work by you, and have a great Thanksgiving. It's always a ton of fun. Yeah.
I mean, you're bunkered in the US, so I hope you get to enjoy it as much as I do. And I would advise that you lay off the heavy carbs today so that tomorrow you can indulge, because I know I'm going to be on the couch by about 7 and sleep by 8.
All right. It's good advice. I'll give you the update when we reconvene next week.
Sounds good. Good work, Scotty.
Yeah, you too, pal.
Thanks for listening to The Suitcase and The Scribe, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.